What do you mean you can still hear me talking? You mean after I muted myself on Skype, you can still hear me talking? I wasn't saying anything after that. I don't think I said anything after that. Anyway, so we are talking tonight about whatever's on my mind, but we're talking about we talked a moment about how Americans are pretty puritanical about sex or whatever, and it is true, unfortunately. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Let's unmute him on Skype and see if we can hear you. You could hear you on Skype. So that's good. Fuck, hold on. Let's go back. Hold on. Oh, you can't hear me. Hold on. Where the fuck is Skype? Sorry. Oh, there we go. Now, can you hear me now? Should be able to hear me now. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, good. All right. So anyway, so sorry about the subjection to my singing. I apologize, everybody who's listening over in the other show, and on my show. I apologize. So now you hear two of us. It says, are you hearing that on Skype? Are you hearing that on? Are you hearing that two of us on Spreaker, or are you hearing two of me on the other one? Because Bathtub Girl, if you have TalkShoe open as well as Spreaker, then you might hear me twice.
That's probably why she's hearing
you probably hear me for that reason. Everybody else in the chat room, David and Caleb, can you hear me once or do you hear me twice? I'm sorry to use you guys as guinea pigs, but I'm trying to make sure everything is set up right. He only hears one, so yeah, it was Todd's stream. Okay, yeah, it was the other stream. Okay, so we can move on with the show now. Great. Okay, so what was I going to talk about? Oh, so I was talking earlier to Caleb about the fact that who's in the chat room right now, and David as well is in the chat room. Okay, good. You hear me once. He hears me. Okay, stop. Sorry to pause again, but Caleb, you're saying you hear me once and someone else talking. Does that mean you can hear Todd when he's talking? You should be able to hear him. Todd, say something.
Yes, testing, 1, 2.
Okay, thank you. That's good, thank you. Okay, Caleb, did you hear Todd say testing, 1, 2? You should be able to hear him. Okay, yeah. So apparently, even though I had you muted, I had myself muted on Skype during the show. They could hear you talking, Todd. So that means that, yeah, okay, I gotcha. Okay, good. So I'm just trying to figure out how everything's working here, everybody. Thank you for your help. Okay, good. So what was I going to say? Oh, okay, so I was going to say this. Okay, look, so I have been gay, obviously, all my life, but I came out when I was 13, no, I was 14, actually. Came out when I was 14, and when I did come out, I was, okay, great, there's going to be this whole community out there just waiting for me, and going to be so nice and kind and loving and accepting, and, and I spent most of my life being very much an outcast because I was biracial. And not that anybody who's biracial is always an outcast, but I was, it wasn't just because I was biracial, it was also because I was just different. I'm just a different kind of person. But I think that it definitely exacerbated it. I know it did. Anyway, but because of that, so I knew when I was gay, I was like, okay, no big deal. I'm just one more thing, right? No big deal. And so once I came out, I was expecting this community of people who would be so nice to me and loving and accepting. Well, that's not what I found. When I actually came out, I thought I was going to have a new family and friends and stuff, right? And I did make friends and whatever, but it really wasn't like that at all. The gay community itself is, and always has been, dominated, the majority of it, by white men, okay? White gay men, generally. So as a result of that, there's a lot of racism in the gay community. There was then, there is now. And I experienced a lot of that when I first came out, and I would, meet people online, as I told you before in previous shows. If you listen to my show on BTR before, I have told you before that I would meet people online, and we'd meet up, and they didn't know I was biracial. They didn't know I was half black and half white. They didn't have a clue. And I didn't feel the need to tell them. I felt, well, I honestly didn't understand why it was a big deal. They were either attracted to me or they weren't, They were either interested or they weren't. I didn't understand why whether I was biracial or not mattered. So I didn't mention it to anybody for a long time because I just didn't think about it, because I didn't think about race. I didn't think about it that way or whatever, whether they were white or Hispanic or whatever it was I was interested in. So so I remember meeting several guys, and one guy I met came to my house, and I was 14 and he was like 17, I think. Yeah, he was 17. His name was Bill. Anyway, and he came to my house and we met. We talked online and on the phone for probably a couple months. And so we finally met up and he met me and he said, "Oh, I didn't know you were Hispanic." And I said, "I'm not Hispanic." He said, "Oh, but you look like you are." I said, "But I'm not." I said, "I'm half black, I'm half white." He said, "You are?" It's like, "Yeah." And so he was like, "Oh, okay." And so it was all very weird after that. And then it happened again and again and again. I'd go to meet guys or, for dates or whatever, like first dates or something. And it often happened. It didn't happen all the time, of course. Obviously, I had many dates and ended up having sex a lot, whatever. But I was, it happened a lot of the time. I'd say 50% of the time it probably happened that way. And so I just realized that it was now for some reason, and they would tell me, they would get so offended that like one guy got so offended. He's like, "Why didn't you fucking tell me? I didn't know you." Anyway, I'm not going to use the words that he used, but he, was not very nice to me. And so, I after that happened, they always try to make it like it was my fault for not having told them. And I felt very, 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 what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? Very, I don't know the word I'm looking for. Sorry, it's escaped my brain. But just sort of dejected and hurt and just very depressed over it. And I began to get a complex and feel like, well, what the fuck is wrong with me? I mean, I'm not ugly. I knew I wasn't ugly because I got plenty of affirmation that I wasn't an unattractive person from other people, even though these people would say I was because I wasn't what they expected. And I really began to have a really bad, yes, dehumanized. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you very much about that, girl. And I began to develop this major anxiety complex, okay? And I got and I always had somewhat of an anxiety, very, very minor anxiety issue. But when I started dating when I was 14 and this kind of thing started to happen, my anxiety levels went up. I mean, just crazy because I was always afraid I was going to be rejected by everyone I met or judged or people were not going to like me or that I wasn't going to be what they expected. So I always was so afraid to meet people. So it took me longer and longer and longer to meet people because I had to really feel like I could trust them and be honest with them. And so, of course, at that point, I was always honest from the beginning. And not that I was never lying about it at the beginning, but I mean, I was always upfront about the fact that I was biracial. So when I first started talking to someone, I would say, well, I'm biracial. And then I would say, I'm 6 foot and I have dark brown hair and I have green eyes and da da da. So that's what I would say. And then they would say, "Oh, I didn't know that. I'm not interested," or they would be interested. So for me, my experience was very different and weird in the gay community when I was coming out because I was very. Most of my experiences were online, meeting people. I didn't begin to meet people out in public, in terms of dating. I mean, until I was probably 17, but probably about 17, and then 18, of course, in college and stuff. So and then I began to get more affirmation about my appearance and stuff for people who didn't care what race I was or what mixture of races I was. They just cared about what I looked like or who I was inside. They didn't care about what my father was or my mother was. The point I'm getting to here, though, is that it was the gay community. For me, when I came out, was not a welcoming place. And it wasn't just about dating people. It was also just about having friendships and knowing people and really being somewhat of a, part of the group, And what I always really wanted so badly was just to belong and felt like I belonged, somewhere. Even in my own family, besides my mother and my grandmother, whom adored me and I loved them and whatever. But I mean, I felt like I belonged with them, of course. But my extended family, I never felt like I belonged in either side. And I never felt like I belonged with my with people in school. Only a handful of friends I belonged to or whatever. I mean, at least when I was 14 at that point. Later on, that changed. But my point is that I never felt like I belonged. So really, what I was longing for was a feeling of belonging, and like there was a community out there that was going to accept me and love me. And when I came out, that wasn't what I experienced. And even like I said, I tried to be friends with people, and they wouldn't want to be friends with me because of what they perceived me as. So nowadays, the gay community isn't really that much different. People look at the gay community from the outside and they think, wow, gay guys are so nice and sweet and da-da-da-da-da-da or whatever. And yeah, gay guys can be those things, of course. And I have plenty of friends who are like that. But I learned from those years, those teenage years before I was an adult, and all of the sort of pain and agony I went through, and there was a lot of it because I'm an incredibly sensitive individual, and it was just, I can't explain to you how excruciatingly painful those years were for me, and not just for those reasons, for many others as well. But I had come through that and realized that what was important in people. Not that I didn't before, but it reinforced what I already knew, was that it didn't matter what people were physically, their physical attractiveness, or their race, or their socioeconomic background, or who they were otherwise. All that mattered to me, and I knew it was shallow to be any other way, was who they were inside. Just like Martin Luther King Jr. said about the content of their character. That's all I really give a shit about, okay? And so that's why through high school, all of my friends were just like a fucking rainbow flag. I mean, I had friends of all kinds, all races, all socioeconomic backgrounds, all types of people, jocks and cheerleaders, and I also had friends who were like, like goth or whatever, and I had friends who were like, I had friends of every group is what I'm trying to say. And I thank God that I went through those things, because it really helped me to be who I am today and really accept everybody for who and what they are. And so even though it was agonizing and painful and really, really, really difficult for me, it made me, I was already strong because I survived it, but it made me so strong today to be able to be myself and stand in my own skin and be comfortable in it, because I learned that I have no interest in people like that. I had no interest in knowing people like that. I have no interest in being around people like that. And unfortunately, the gay community is filled with a huge swath of vapid, vacuous individuals who have no interest in what is important. If you look at the stereotype of a gay man, the stereotype I'm talking about here, the stereotype is a gay man loves fashion and loves, nice things and nice decor and knows all about, flowers and hair and shit like that or whatever. And a gay man, it just, cares about appearances generally. Really, that's the stereotype of it, okay, of a gay man. And it's not true of every gay man. I'm a living example, and all of my friends that I'm close to and that are gay are living examples of that. People I know in BTR and people I know online are examples of that. I know that people like me exist, and I know them, and that's why we're all friends, because we are alike. We're not like that. But the group that is like that is the group of gay people who are considered to be revered, and that's what people expect you to be. And I myself am just going to be myself. I happen to be in what people may think is a shallow, superficial career, which is architecture and interior design, okay? And so, I don't see architecture that way, because I see architecture as something that affects every single person, every single day of their life, everywhere you go. Interior design does as well, in your car, in your airport, in a building you go to, for your office, your home, it's every fucking where. So I don't consider it to be a shallow, superficial pursuit personally, but that's because that's who I am, and that's who I'm supposed to be. But if I were a hairdresser, is that shallow? No, not necessarily by itself. If you're a fashion designer, is that shallow? Not necessarily by itself. It's more about what you take from, people. I'm trying to say. I'm starting to get flustered here. Sorry. I'm trying to say this, is that when you do something, it's not who you are. Okay? When you do something, it's not who you are. But gay men are often stereotyped as being exactly what they do. And so if you're a hairdresser, you're this, whatever. So I just want to say that I'm just disheartened that even today, in this time, in this era, we still have all this bigotry in the gay community. And I think that it's changing because the demographics of this country are changing, of the world really are changing. And now you see a lot more brown people, if you want to call it, or beige people like myself out there in the community being leaders in the community. Whereas 20 years ago, that was not the case. So I just want to talk a little about that. I wanted to say that I'm glad things are moving in a different direction, and not to think that all gay people are like that. Gay people are not all shallow, superficial assholes, but yes, they do exist, and they do have a detrimental effect on some of us, and have those of us who have to be ourselves and not fit some particular mold. And let's talk about, what is that mold? That mold is someone who probably has blonde hair, blue eyes, 6'4", perfect gym body, perfect ass, perfect ab, perfect biceps, lives in a perfect house, drives a perfect foreign German car, drives,